Good evening, everybody. All right, excellent. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our December work session. I hope everybody and their families had a very nice Thanksgiving. With that, we're going to get right into it. We have two presentations this evening. The first is going to be grade 3 to 8 testing, followed by a preliminary budget discussion. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sherman if she wants to make the introductions for the grade 3 to 8.
Sure. We're very lucky tonight to have our curriculum associate for ELA, Dr. Dan Salzman, our curriculum associate for mathematics, Helene Kriegstein, who are going to drill down a little bit of how we performed this year on the grades 3 to 8 New York State assessments.
Wonderful.
Do you guys have slides that we should sit over there for?
All right, so we'll head out to the audience. Thank you very much.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you, good night.
I don't think you're against.
Right, you good?
Good.
And good evening, everyone. Yeah. So maximum effort is the theme of this presentation. My name is Daniel Salzman. I'm the Curriculum Associate of English Language Arts K-12 here at Jericho. My colleague to my left here is Helene Kriegstein. She's the Curriculum Associate of Mathematics. And really what we want to do is just give some context before we get into the data. We were asked to do a presentation in regards to the 3 through 8 testing in both English and mathematics. And really, it's an important data point, but it's just one data point. And I think it's really important to understand that even though it is in Newsday and we work very hard all year towards that assessment, the learning and the ways in which we try to reach individual students is continuous and ongoing. So one big takeaway from the other piece of data besides student performance is how many students actually participate in this test. We also, in that Newsday article, it showed that we had 88.9% student participation this last year. And even in the height of the opt-out movement, we haven't really lost that many students to the actual administration. It's wonderful. If you don't mind just getting through it, and then I can answer any questions.
Well,
if you
just
have.
related to that,
Sure.
is that math or English or both?
That's combined.
Okay,
That's combined.
That's it.
Yeah, and then just another context point, as you go through, we were asked to look at a 10-year trend, which you're about to see, but I just wanted to give a little historical context as well. So you're gonna see data from 2014 to 2024, and just a couple of changes along the way, both in ELA and math. So one big change was in 2016, the standards, the content, the scoring rubric, as well as the actual proficiency, the standard for the levels changed. Okay, so what the state does suggest is that you don't compare years after back to, pre-2016. Another change was the test used to be 3 days. And so then in 2018, it changed from a 3-day test to a 2-day test, okay? And then we went through another change 2 years ago where we moved from paper-based testing to computer-based testing. So that
What year?
we've been doing it for 2 years strong. So it was suggested, and then it's now obligatory this coming spring.
So it says 23 and 24 were
Computer-based. That's right. So what you see here is a 10-year trend, and what we're showing is the comparison 3 through 8 proficiency levels, that includes proficiency and mastery in grades 3 through 8 combined, and against the state average. Okay, so you're seeing the Jericho average for the past 10 years, and again, there's just that black line in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. So there were no tests in 2020, and then what you see on average, and I'm going to share it with Helene in a second, is that the trend is on average between 30 and 40% above the state average, and that hasn't really changed. Even when the state trends down, we sort of stay with that mode. And of course, you want to ask, how do we do in neighboring districts? On average, for the past 10 years, we were always in the top 1, 2, or 3, depending on the grade level.
So as Dan was saying, here's the data for math over the past 10 years, and you can see, as Dr. Salzman was saying, if you look at the New York State data, how there's kind of an ebb and flow with that state data. We're traveling along that ebb and flow, but we're at a higher level, right? So we're proud of the work that we're doing there. But now the real question becomes, what do we do with these data, right? Do we just sit and admire it, or what are we actually doing? And we really use the data to inform our instruction. We talk to our teachers about the data at the district level, the teacher level, and of course down to the student level. So I just want to give you a snapshot of what that looks like. This is actually a slide that we've used in data meetings with teachers, and when we present them with their data, and by the way, every teacher 3 through 8 has their data each year in a folder. And when we dive into it, we ask these questions, right? What do you notice? What do you wonder? Is there a distractor that you see? How do we use this information to inform our instruction? And what are your next steps in teaching the content? And finally, what supports do you need from us? So one of the things that I wanted to show you, and this is just a sample grade 5 GAP report from 2024. There are 2 reports that Dan and I really like a lot, the GAP report and the WASA report. WASA stands for Wrong Answer Summary Analysis. I'll show you that in a moment. But this is a GAP report for the district. So you're going to see that this is a double line graph. The green line with the green squares, that's the district, the region. And the region are aggregate of all of the districts in Nassau County that subscribe to the data warehouse. So there's about 56 or 58 districts. And the red would be our school district. So this goes question by question along the x-axis, and the y-axis, the vertical axis, is the percentage of students that got a question right. So remember before I was talking about the ebb and flow in the state data? You could almost see that here when it comes down to this specific 5th grade test, right? You see how it's going up and down, and we're going up and down too, but at a higher level, okay? So when we present this to teachers, there's a third line in that graph. So we'll have teacher data compared with school data, compared with district data, or teacher data compared with the region data, so that they could see that specific comparison. And then again, this is just a snippet, we'll go to the WASA report. That's the Wrong Answer Summary report. Analysis, WASA, Wrong Answer Summary Analysis. So in the WASA report, we may find a question that we really want to look at. So I'm looking at question 20. Here's the standard. This first area shows the percentage of the region that got the question correct. So remember I said the region is Nassau County, the districts that subscribe to the data warehouse. So 57.6% of the region got that answer correctly. The correct choice is 1. These are the students who chose choice 1 in our school district, so 81% or 164 students. And then really no one chose the other choices until you get to the last choice. We have 17% who chose choice 4. So that's kind of what we notice, and then we ask the teachers, well, what do you wonder? And they'll typically say, well, what's the question? So then we go to the question. And we dive into this question. So this is from a 4th grade test. Tiffany has 5 times as many red apples as she has green apples. And if she has 20 red apples, how many green apples does she have? No, I'm not gonna quiz you. But you do know that the answer is, do we know what the answer is? Right, it's A is an apple, okay. So the answer is the first one, and our kids did great on it, right? We had 81% of the kids get it right. But if you remember in the slide before, do you see right here, there's a little bit of a distractor there. So we have 17% that are choosing choice 4, and we want to know why. Why are they choosing that? So this is actually what we do. We go through what the solution is. We would talk about how we would teach this to kids, which bar would be bigger, the red bar or the green bar, and why, and then we plug in the forwards, where does the question mark live? We're looking for the green. And interestingly, we quickly determined that the distractor is D, and we talk about being really careful about asking students to highlight key words. Can you see why from this question? Right? 5 times 20. Oh, it's 100, right? So that's why we have to look at these questions in context. And one of the strategies we use is cover up the numbers and just make a bar model so that you get the context of the situation. So again, this is one question. I just want to give you an idea of what we do in these data meetings. So that's the type of thing that we do. I do not expect you to be able to see all of this, but what I want to show you is what the teachers do with that information. So what they do is they identify areas where they really want to spend time informing their own instruction. They look at the standard, they talk about the distractor, they talk about the implications for teaching, they include the assessment question, and then they write a parallel question. A parallel question doesn't mean we're going to use the same exact question with different numbers, but it has to be a question that is speaking to that specific standard, because it always goes back to the standards. Yes. Yeah.
So you get these grades, these scores a year later, right? So
We usually get them in, what, September, October? Yeah, in the fall, the next
the
fall.
next fall, so you.
We have these data meetings in October.
For their current class, but
Right.
then the class a grade ahead got it wrong, so are they somehow the teacher of their next year class somehow gonna help them correct what they do?
Yeah,
We don't have specific students who gets it right or wrong, but those kids got it wrong or now a grade ahead.
right. So during those data meetings, we're sharing all of the data and we're discussing the trends with everyone. So we'll say, okay, in 4th grade, this is what we're seeing. We have the 4th grade teachers there. So they all have access to it, but the teachers of that current grade tweak their instruction to hopefully be able to address those areas in the current school year. Does that make sense?
And
Yeah,
these
so
are,
are you somehow getting to the.
they're mixed
because
grade
the
level
fifth grade-
meetings. Yeah.
The 5th grade teachers are getting it also to see.
Yes, they're
because
all-
Last year did it wrong.
Yes, they're all together. They're in the same data meeting. Dan, do you want to speak to English?
So, similarly, in ELA, the same meeting, we just look at it a little bit different, but this is, again, you're looking at a WASA report, and so what I took was, and so this is looking actually at 2023, but I chose the 3rd grade test on purpose for a couple of reasons. One being that that's our 1st grade level where our children actually face this test, and developmentally, it is a challenge, right? So this is the first time that they sit in that setting, it's the first time that they have to take the skills that we're teaching them K through 3 and then apply them to this kind of testing format, both in multiple choice and constructive response. So I'm going to show you a multiple choice question, reason being, this was the only question that we actually performed less than the region by 5%. Okay, so we had, the region was 73%, we performed at 67%, and I said, what's up with that? And so we look at this question and we see that the right answer is response 1, but clearly response 3 and 4 were distractors. Okay, so we want to dig into that. And here's the question, and this is why I say it's a challenge, because there are so many skills embedded into a type of question, and more so, what's attached to this is a passage called thunderstorm. Everybody knows what a thunderstorm is, right?
Thunderstorm?
A thunderstorm. Exactly. So then our 8-year-olds have to read a passage, the title is Thunderstorm, and it's actually in this question, okay? So it also includes 2 words that we don't expect the children to know, and that's why they're defined. And it asks the children to go into that back after they read it and actually use 2 different sections of that text to synthesize in order to answer this question. Okay, I haven't even mentioned what the question's asking, but I just gave you the layers that go into the skill. Okay, so you can look at this, and we already know the answer is number 1, but when the question says, what do they show about the babysitter? I think the the babysitter probably knows Billy very well, and the babysitter might have many hobbies based on all the things that she's saying in there. But the best answer was the babysitter has a good idea. Okay, that's what the state is telling
This
us.
is a crazy question for third grade.
Our third
And yet, our teachers are doing an amazing job to prepare our students in every grade level. And that's the point of this, okay? So you see the question, and then so what do? We know that kids are struggling, we have this data meeting, but then we want to look also, how do we train teachers to maybe teach differently, or as Aline said, change maybe how we taught it in previous years. And so I wanted to show you, this is an anchor chart actually out of a third grade classroom from this year. This is how we teach fiction. And I also just wanted to make a nod to the staff development that our teachers are part of. I know Ivy spoke about some of the professional development in previous meetings, and so this is, and actually we had this staff development going on with high school teachers today, and so this is in regards to learning targets and success criteria for students. This is how students would reference when they're learning about how to study or how to analyze both literature and especially all of these levels to author's craft, okay? Yeah?
Who writes these questions?
The state?
I imagine some.
It's a testing company,
But there's a.
Nextera is the name of the
committee
company.
that, gets together to write these questions?
We would hope so.
if you say so.
We would hope so.
You have to ask Nextera.
And if students perform, again, it's just part of my agency with respect to this, if large groups of students perform poorly on a particular item, is that item then discarded, or?
I can't
We
speak
don't
to
know. Okay.
what that company would do, but, and also the questions that we are able to actually study are only the released questions. Okay, so the state decides which questions are released that we can actually see, so we know which questions our students might get right or wrong, but we only have access to certain questions.
Gotcha.
So the unreleased are more, can we,
I can't comment, I never saw
are
that.
they more experimental or are they just?
They could be field tested.
Yeah.
Some
So
of
we have
them
no
could be
idea.
field tested. We don't know.
Okay.
Unless you're standing over a child while they're taking it, that would be the only way you would see what's on their screen.
So when you get this WASA report, does it actually give you the stem of the question, or it only gives you the data?
It'll give you the standard, not the question.
Well, the WASA report that you saw before, just to point out, so if it's highlighted in blue, they release that question. So when we get the WASA and the gap, it's in regards to the
So
release
you won't be able to
questions.
click that link and actually see the stem of the question?
Yeah, well, I'm showing it to you, yes, so that is the question.
Okay,
Yeah,
but in every instance, you'd be able to see that?
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, and same with the constructive response as well, and with the constructive response, the other helpful thing is that we get anchors. So in the past, we scored our constructive response, now with computer-based testing, all of the constructive response is scored by the company.
Understood.
Just to go back a second, so of course, after we do that kind of teacher training, then of course, we may have students that still need more academic intervention, and that's where you get into tier 1 in the classroom, tier 2 maybe outside the classroom, and then tier 3 might be a specialized program, research-based. But this multi-tiered system of support obviously speaks to differentiation and our focus on individual student progress.
So, sure.
When we meet with the teachers to go over the data reports, the first thing that they always want to do, and I've been doing this for a long time, and we've been doing these data meetings for so long, they always want to go to, like, what was the hardest question? Where was the drop? And we have to remind them that we also have to celebrate our success, right? The way we teach math, the way we teach ELA, it's about critical thinking. We're not all about strictly a test prep institution, right? We're about teaching for understanding. And the scores will follow. The scores do follow that. So we're proud of the work that we do. We're proud of the work that the teachers do and the support of the community and the resources that we have, because we are able to provide tiered, differentiated support for teachers, for students, and these results don't happen by accident, so we are proud of that. So now is the time for questions, and that's us, but you can ask us questions right now, Sarah.
I understand what you do by the questions, do you track students from year to year? Because, and are the same students in that 3 or 4, 10% or 15% every year? Or do people score a 4 one year, score a 2 the next year, go back to a 4? Or is it pretty consistently the cohort of students who are not meeting the state standard?
So for those of you who are at home or didn't hear, the question is, are we looking at the specific students who aren't meeting the standards and kind of tracking them to see how they're doing, if they're improving, and do you?
Or providing them extra services?
Right, so we do provide them extra services. So for example, students who are performing typically at a level 1 or level 2, it might not be exactly at those levels, we have cut scores within those levels, but students who are performing below proficiency, we offer them some kind of support. So that will either be in the form of academic intervention services, our ELA and math support classes. It could be they're getting support through guided study or resource room, but we do offer them support. In terms of, do you ever see students go from a 2 to a 4? Usually not in 1 year. So we tend to see students, we do see growth, but we usually don't see it in 1 school year.
No, I wouldn't expect it in 1 year, but what I'm saying is, you have a percentage of your students who in 3rd grade, the first year you give the test, score a 1 or a 2, below the 3 that's required for proficiency, if I understand it.
Right.
Are those gonna be the same sort of group of kids who, when they get to 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, who are also gonna be making up the district's 1 or 2 scores?
Not necessarily, no, not
Of
necessarily.
course not necessarily, but is that really it, or are we able to take those kids who score 1 or 2s in their 3rd or 4th grade and get them to proficiency? It's other students who either new to the district or students who are doing much better in 3rd or 4th grade who fall off. I'm trying to say, is there a fluidity in students there, or is it really, we have underachievers, we work with them to give them all the support we can, but they just will remain underachievers? I know it's a hard way, so I'm just really trying to understand.
I don't understand the descriptor underachiever, we're talking about human beings.
Not meeting
if I may.
proficiencies, underachieving the
Not
state
my
standard.
opinion, but.
However
so-
you want to define it, Dr. Sullivan.
So, I'm not defining it, but I do think that every child has the potential to meet mastery, that's our goal. So we teach towards mastery, every student has that potential, and that's what we strive for, and that's what our teachers are striving for. I do wanna just make a shout out at this time, because we are on all of the teachers, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, learning center instructors. It takes a village to administer this test in a secure and safe environment. Our students have, I think, a wonderful experience while taking the test. And in that, I think, gives them that opportunity to perform to their best ability. I love the middle school model, they do their personal best. So yeah, we're tracking these kids every year. I'm pleasantly surprised by their growth. If it's not in 1 year, the beautiful thing, and I know you do get the Regents data, that we have 99% passing in English Regents. So eventually they get there. And that's been for years.
Say again?
We've had 99% proficiency in the English Regents for years.
No, and that is
So this-
a
that's why I said it's an
separate
important-
question.
well-
We're looking to not Jericho data, I'm talking about across many school districts. When you look at state testing scores, when you look at elementary school, the percentages could be 40 or 45%. I'm not talking about Jericho, I'm talking about other districts. You get to middle school and somehow they're at 50 or 55. They get to high school, they somehow jump up to 75 or 85.
It could be
And-
developmental.
What?
It could be developmental as the 3rd grade question I showed you.
Well, no, it certainly could be, it's basically every district that I've looked at, you see this huge jump from middle school to high school, and so I don't, and that's why I think this is much more, I can show you the data, it's sort of weird, where it makes me think, as people have argued, you dumb down, not us, this has nothing to do with Jericho, dumbing down standards once you get to high school and say, we want everybody
Can we
to
just talk about Jericho?
Well, we have, but then that's not what you're doing though. So I still, everything what you're talking about, I understand, everybody can get to mastery, which is a 4. Proficiency is a 3. We have students who score 1s or 2s. So I understand everybody we have has the potential to get to a 4. Our objective is to get them to a 4. What I'm trying to understand do most of the kids who score 1 or 2 in 3rd or 4th grade, are those the same kids who are scoring 1s or 2s in 7th and 8th grade? Or most of those kids, are we able to get them to proficiency? I don't know why that's, why you should
I don't
be
have the
ahead
answer,
of that.
because I just don't have the answer to that question. I've seen great growth from, I'm not gonna speak about
I don't
individual
think
kids,
you
but.
see great growth. I'm sure, wait, hold on, as I said when I posted these questions, I understand that our scores are meaningfully higher than Nassau County, meaningfully higher than the state. And I'm sure if this was a national test, it would be meaningfully higher than the country. What I'm trying to understand, I understand we have 90% participation rate, so we're going to have, you know, some kids just have a bad day. I fully get it. Some kids go for the, whatever you call them, the teaser answers. Why are we not, like, what's the reason why we're not at 95 and 98%, the way we are with the regions? So you're saying when we get to regions, we have these kids at 99% pass rate. Why are we not at 99% pass rate in the 3rd grade, and the 4th grade, and the 8th grade?
Different human beings just take longer to get there, I guess. I can't speak for why in one particular grade level or why, one particular child
Because it's a
might.
different type of
But
test.
it's
For
not
any
one
given
particular
regions,
grade
you may
level.
have different grade
Third grade.
levels versus the grade
But the
three
regions,
test
we're
is
not
all
seeing,
grade
we're not
three.
seeing kids taking regions, I mean, English, what, until 8th, 9th grade?
No, the Regents is only in 11th grade, it's a summative exam, and that is the culmination for English, so that's why I'm just using that as
So
an
we can't even
example.
make comparisons, for
I don't think
example,
we should,
to
yeah.
8-year-olds necessarily.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to find your question, and I wanna give you an answer, I just don't understand it.
I mean, Sam, isn't there, there's a piece that, again, kids develop and grow maturationally, educationally, at different rates of speed. So there's a 2-year difference in 3rd grade, there's a 2-year difference in 5th grade. And basically, I think what the data is showing is that we are supporting our kids who get 1s and 2s. We're zeroing in on their growth and providing them with the supports they need in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And again, cumulatively, over that span of time, based upon the instructional support, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of each individual kid, by the time our kids graduate, 11th grade English as an example, by the time they graduate, we really have brought them all up to a level that we're comfortable with.
But that's fine, you could see that, Dr. Salzman, if you look at your 3rd graders, and you say, in our 3rd graders, we had X% of our students who scored 3s or 4s. When those students were in 4th grade, X% of them scored 3s or 4s. When they got to 7th grade, 8th grade, the X% of them scored 3. Do you see that type of increase when you follow a class from 3rd, 4th?
It changes every year, I can't follow a class, the core changes, sometimes the test is different, you know, so.
But of course the test is different,
So-
but to say that the
But a
test
kid,
is
so let
different.
me answer it this way, if a kid is still struggling, we're gonna keep trying to help.
No, and again, that's not the question. The question is, do the percentage of students scoring 3s or 4s in 3rd grade, does that number increase by the time that same class gets to 8th grade? And I understand there are
That has
factors
not been
where
what
it's
our
not
data
increased.
shows us. So no.
So
it
no,
does
so-
not increase, no.
Okay, so it does, so we provide all these services, but it's really not until high school when you're talking about the 11th grade.
No, that's just the only test I have to show you that they mention proficiency. There is no other regions until 11th grade. So after 8th grade, there's no other standardized test that I can show you besides NWA. And this is another point. This is, like I started the presentation, this is one data point. And if you remember my presentation 2 years ago on female students, we see growth in lots of different measures, whether it's a standardized technology program, we have a pilot, for example, whether it's NWEA, which shows individual student growth bookended in September and June. That way, we see growth within the same year, regardless of when we get the state data.
And so I'm saying, so in this data, understand this is one set, very specific, understood. We do not see growth in the class of 2030 took this test in 3rd grade. The class of 2030 took a similar test in 4th grade, in 5th grade. If I follow the class of 2030 from 3rd grade to 8th grade, you're saying that I will not see an increase in the percentage of mastery or
No,
proficiency
no,
of
I said
those
the
students?
opposite. You would see an increase in performance,
You just
in
said
positive.
you didn't see it.
I apologize, the way you worded that question, you were saying, does the
That was
group
easier,
of
that
ones
was
and
distracting,
twos,
yeah.
yeah, you said the group of ones and twos, the non-proficient, does that increase? That's the way that you said it, and I said no.
Okay, the percentage not, okay, so.
That's what you
so-
said.
so- Okay, so
That's
I
what
apologize,
you
I
said.
misspoke. So from third through eighth grade, you follow the same, class of 2030, blah, 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 blah. You will see increased performance. So when you showed us our overall scores, and I didn't write down that specific number of how many scored mastery, because you did a school-wide number, you didn't do it by grade, I don't think.
No, because I was just comparing it to what news they put out.
No, I understand. So when I look at that number, for the third grade, we would expect our average to be, we would expect the third grade percentage to be lower. We'd expect the eighth grade percentage to be higher.
No, it doesn't.
Why not? You just said they increased from third through eighth grade, the 3 years before
That
they
is the
increased.
trend of most of our students. I can't guarantee you that an eighth grade cohort is gonna score, because
The
each
test
year
is
they
getting-
change the test, each year,
And the
so I just told
test
you
is
2 years ago.
increasing in difficulty.
The example you give, the kids in, let's say, sixth grade, took a paper-based test, and now they're taking a computer-based test in eighth grade, and you're asking me to compare those values.
Is
It's
it
not
based on a
fair.
curve though? Doesn't it?
No, there's no curve. I don't
So it's
know,
just-
I don't even know how the state sets their scale scores, and that changes every year. So a 420 in one year is not a 420 in another year. That's why we always give maximum effort.
I'm sorry, what is maximum effort? Because we give maximum effort all the time, I thought.
That's what I said.
Okay, so you're saying,
Regardless of how the test changes or the challenges that our kids face.
There's no way to compare different years.
Correct. It's just difficult. You're asking, you want the same sort of criteria.
no, I don't want to, I just want,
I
I
can't do that.
I just want something that points to the fact that, yes, we are doing a good job
But I
based on
just
the
told
data,
you
but
that the
everything.
culminating summative test that the state wants us to do for our kids, we have 99% passing in English language arts, year over year. I can't give you any other,
And as you've heard me say here before, I don't hold the regions as the best judge of Jericho, because if we are,
but the state test is supposed to be the preparation for the regions.
what I'm talking about is, we talk about the 99% region. I hold us to a higher standard to say that, oh, our region scores are higher than this. They should be higher than the other places. So what I'm trying to understand with
I'm not
this,
saying higher than anybody. I'm just saying that they're all, almost all of our students are
I
proficient.
don't mean, I'm saying, yes, they're proficient,
I can't
but
get
I
higher
would
than 99.
expect our
I'm trying.
students to be proficient because they're getting the best
Trying.
education. I'm still trying to understand the value add, and so you're saying that this exam isn't really a great, we can't use this because of the changing of tests from year to year, because of the various ways it's graded, the various ways it's given over the last decade, that we can't empirically show that we've been value added to these students. That's what I'm trying to understand. I want to numerically or empirically show that our education is value added to these students. And so the only thing.
Based on this test?
Well, based on this data,
Okay.
yeah, based on this
There's a lot
test.
of other data points that show you that we give lots of value out to our kids.
Okay, well, what's the data point?
So,
Well, I just
No, you
mentioned
just told me.
NWA, I just mentioned the Regents as the summative graduation requirement from New York State. Yeah, good.
So let me
Let the
just,
math person talk.
yeah, no, but I agree with everything that Dan was saying. What I'd like to add to this is the way that we look at these data. We look at it aggregate, we disaggregate, and then we get down to the individual student, right? And that's really where we're focusing our efforts on, the individual students, as opposed to, and I understand what you're saying, as opposed to taking a group of students who got a level 1 and 2 and taking that whole group and tracking them year over year. We're looking at individual students. We have people in the cohort coming and going, the tests are different, the tests are increasing in difficulty as they should, right, as the kids are aging up. So the mechanisms that we're using to track student growth individually are NWEA, IXL, Delta Math, in-class, exit tickets, Pear Deck, Desmos, with data coming in from that, and that's really where our efforts go, to individual students and how to move them from one level to another level. And it's not just getting a level 1 to a level 2 and a level 2 to a level 3, right? We're also looking to move kids from a level 3 to a level 4, but that's where our focus is on. Does that make sense? That's really what
Absolutely.
we're looking at. That's where our
Absolutely.
efforts are.
And I understand that completely. So do we have data from any of those acronyms you just threw at us showing how those individual students progress and say, okay, here are, again, in year 3, third grade, we had 15 students who were, whatever the measure is for being the lowest proficiency of whatever is in that grade, to show how whatever we're doing got them into a higher level. Forget about this test, in anything, like, where is some piece of data that you point to and say, what we're doing is being successful? Because I have the utmost confidence that we are being successful. I just would like to have a number to point to and say, here, this is how you know we're successful. It's not a gut feel, it's not a, of course we're being good. What numbers do you look at the end of the year?
So I can't say that we took these 15 students, but we are looking at students individually. So I would be able to say, and the buildings would be able to say at their at-risk meetings and at their IST, instructional study team meetings, that's where we look at data, where we're spending time talking about individual students and the growth. And all of the measures that I talked about, that's embedded into all of those meetings. So we're really going one student at a time. And we do see progress, and sometimes it's not as steep of a slope as we would like, sometimes it's a little bit flatter, but we do see progress. That's where the tiered interventions come in, right? So that's where we start with tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we collect data for a bunch of weeks, we try something else until they're successful, until there's some growth. So it's hard for us to say, we took this whole group and how did this whole group move? Because every student's different. So we're truly going student by student. So that's why it's hard. I'm not avoiding the question, but it's hard for me to give an answer to aggregate them.
I don't think you're avoiding. I don't know if we're talking past each other or some of this information isn't as simple as I'd like to hear it in my head. And that's how it comes across. But I'm still struggling to understand how someone walks in, knows nothing about Jericho. Okay, show me how, I have a third grader, show me the progress that he or she is gonna make over the next 5 years. What can you show me to show me how students are going to be, whether he was a 1 when he gets there or a 3 when he gets there, show me that your students are making progress. How do you know that?
I'm gonna interrupt, if you don't mind. Just that, for instance, if a third grader scores a 2, we will go in and look at that 2 deeply, and if it's a low 2, and then the following year in 4th grade, that student scored a high 2, we know, just based on this one particular data point, that child has made progress, even though it's still a 2 in our results. So we actually, Helene is spot on, we actually literally go student by student, we really do.
Right, but okay, and so if you have this student by student data, you're saying at no point do we ever aggregate it and say that we from 3rd grade to 4th grade were able to increase, I'm not talking about 2s or 3s or 2.1, a low 2 to a mid 2.
Well, high 2 is
We don't have
growth.
any aggregate information that we can point to and say, here, this is what our 4th grade teachers were able to accomplish by taking students who were this level in 3rd grade and now they're here in 4th grade. We do not have anything like that.
Not as a group, we literally do individual students. So what happens is, at the elementary level, teachers will bring, at an IST meeting, instructional support team meeting, teachers will bring up a student if they have a concern, and those teachers also, they have to bring data to those meetings to support. So it's more authentic classroom data. I'm concerned this child is struggling, what are we gonna do about it? And we sit as a team, or building sits as a team, and they develop strategies, and those strategies are monitored every 6 weeks with data, but it truly is an individual student by student piece.
Question?
Yeah, I have a question. Just asking for the focusing point for the education here is like, you were talking about the individual students, right? If some students have something to be improved, you're focusing on that area. But there are 2 ends, right? Some students, they might have their strength on something. Do you also, to develop those group of the students, let them go further?
Enrichment is
Absolutely,
on a
it's
daily
built in,
basis.
it's built into.
2 ends, right? One
Yes.
end, they are on the lower end.
You're talking about
Another group, they are on the
remediation
higher
versus
end.
enrichment, right?
Enrichment.
We don't
Right.
want to.
We go beyond the four.
Yes. What I'm trying to say, there are two groups of the people, right? Our goal is not averaging them, right?
Not only focus on the bottom.
Yeah, are you okay? Correct,
You wanna help the top
Are you
performers move.
only
Yes.
focusing
Oh,
on
yes.
the
Right,
top
so-
level,
100%.
or you're helping both of them?
Yeah,
those
of
two
course,
ends?
absolutely.
So every student should have the opportunity to grow and to be challenged, right? So that means, and I think this is to your point, students who are performing at a very high level,
Yes,
they need to also be challenged. So the
Correct.
growth, we're not focusing all of our energy solely on moving students from a level 2 to a level 3. We
Correct.
need to make sure that even our students who are at a level 4, which is at a mastery level, we don't want them sitting around admiring their own work. Well, they can admire their work, but we want to give them appropriate challenges. So we're doing as much enrichment as we are pre-teaching and reteaching and remediation also.
yeah, thank you, that was my question.
Our classrooms are very differentiated. Teachers are trained a lot on how to work with children at all, yep, within one
Depends
classroom.
on their own strengths and their own
Correct.
capability. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna move into the preliminary budget discussion. Mr. Manuel is gonna be leading that. No, he said sit down.
So as we come back up together, I want to point out, and again, I've done this numerous times before, one of the strengths of our school district is that we have the ability to focus on every individual child, whether the child is here, or here. That we are able to deliver that because of the work of the curriculum associates. So tonight you heard from 2 curriculum associates who spend their entire day analyzing data and providing professional development for teachers to support every kid who's here, and here. The work that the curriculum associates do, the end result is when our kids graduate, our kids are almost 100% of them at mastery. And again, a large part of that is from excellent classroom teaching and from the work of the administrators and the support of the parents. But again, I don't think people fully understand the role of the curriculum associates. They spend their day working with, analyzing kid by kid by kid, working with teachers to how can I best support this 7-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid or 12-year-old kid. And it's something that again, I think we need to recognize and say thank you to the role of everyone in the organization, but the leadership within the curriculum associates, 2 of whom you heard an excellent presentation tonight. And I thank all of the curriculum associates for the presentation. And the teachers as well.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to start the budget discussion a little early this year. We received a little information earlier than we normally do, so it worked out well with the timing. As far as process, we begin the budget process basically as soon as school starts for the next school year. So in September, we're sending out information to the principals, the curriculum associates, to provide us information in November regarding staffing, enrollments, supplies, equipment, etc. And we had our first round of staff meetings in the last couple of weeks. The first round is obviously just based on current enrollment, where we are, roll those grades forward, and see what sections we may or may not have for the following year. So we completed that process, and that's an ongoing process, especially at the high school level. where students will be choosing their courses as we get into the winter months. As far as information, one of the big pieces is the tax cap. So that's one of the areas that we received some early information, which was good for us. Two big pieces of that is the CPI, which will be over 2%, so the calculation is 2% or the CPI, whichever is lower. So that part of the calculation will be 2%. And then there's the tax-based growth factor, which we receive from the Office of Real Property Taxes. And for Jericho, that's 0.66% additional on top of the 2%. So as of now, we're looking, tax cap will probably be in the high 2s to around 3 at this point. Health insurance, good news for next year. We were very surprised, pleasantly surprised. The health insurance rates are increasing minimally in most areas and flat in a couple of other areas, which is really good. We're excited about that. That's one of the biggest pieces of the budget.
Any decreases?
Like, so minimally, but there were a couple of like individual health insurance that did actually go down a little bit, very little.
Extremely unusual.
Yes, especially last year where we saw a 15 to 20% increase.
Yeah, we had a huge bump.
Yeah. Teachers' retirement system, basically flat, maybe negligibly a little bit lower as far as the employer contribution rate, which gets multiplied by the payroll. So we'll see a slight increase overall in that. Employees' retirement system went up pretty significantly, probably 10 to 15% in that area. Transportation, we discussed this last year. We'll be going out for an RFP this year, which will definitely increase our first student prices for next year. I don't want to go into too much detail until the RFP goes out, but as I mentioned, in the last couple of years, we're anticipating increases in that area. Payroll, typical, probably overall payroll is probably going to go up about 3% with the new hires that we had this year. And that's basically where we are.
Is that because of increases or just additional teachers?
Combination.
Okay.
Overall payroll. Again, that's probably half of our budget. Payroll, health insurance is another big part,
Do you know what the payroll increase was the year before? Do you remember approximately?
probably about the same.
Was it about the same?
Yeah.
So over year, we're going up about 3% for payroll?
For the most part, sometimes in the last contract, it was probably a little bit lower.
Okay.
We did have enrollment increases over the last 2 years, so staffing in general increased, both at the teacher level as well as the teacher aide level. We saw this year definitely in the aid categories for IEPs, one-on-one aides probably increase at a decent clip this year, as far as number of people. And then the other piece that we'll start talking about in January is capital. We're still reviewing that, and we'll have more information in January. The architect will be joining us to go over the building condition survey that they did over the last few months. And that's basically where we are at this point.
Is there anything on the horizon as far as large projects besides the building maintenance, obviously aging of buildings, anything that we foresee in the next 2 to 3 or 4 years that we might wanna add on, like for example, we did a turf field a couple of years, a couple years ago? That might
You
be-
mean like addition type of,
Yeah.
Like a weight
Like big capital projects.
like a weight room?
Yeah.
That's up to the board, that will remain on the list like it has, but there are definitely more items maintenance-wise as far as the new building condition survey. It's the first one we've done in probably 8 or 9 years. So they'll
Right,
definitely,
you mentioned that a couple months ago.
yeah, it used to be every 5 years, it was mandated for every district at the same time.
Yeah,
And what the state did, because they didn't want to get 700 districts in this, at the same time every 5
right,
years, they
exactly,
started
okay,
spreading it out.
yeah.
So in doing that, we were this year as far as doing the building condition survey.
So we're due.
We did it,
Oh, we
and
did,
we're gonna,
okay.
we're gonna be presenting those results at the January meeting.
Do you have that information already, or are you just working through it?
We're working through it.
Got it.
So you'll definitely see more items on the capital plan spreadsheet per building than we did last year, which I mentioned that after the building condition survey, there will definitely be more items on the list.
So as far as than wants, things like.
Yeah, for the building condition survey, it's definitely more needs than wants.
Well, the building's also a year older, so it's, you know, since we,
Well, since we did the last building condition survey, it's several years.
right, but I mean, just year to year, we're obviously looking at building
Of course.
condition, but you do
Yeah.
the survey, but, you know, you have that, just year over year, you're gonna have deterioration of certain maintenance items.
100%, yeah.
You had mentioned that you guys have spoken to different departments, different staff as far as needs,
Yes.
right? Anything coming out of the technology department that they foresee will cost, you know, more than the usual as far as investing in new, whether it's new cybersecurity or new platforms of any kind?
As far as cybersecurity, I think we're at a level where budget-wise, it's not going to impact.
Okay,
I think we are definitely beginning the recycling program for Chromebooks district-wide. We did a major purchase during COVID, and we're at that point where those that were purchased then need to start getting replaced at a higher level than we have in the last few years.
okay, so there has been no big asks from the technology department as of yet?
There's constant asks, but nothing other than the Chromebooks that I mentioned that would impact the budget in a significant way.
And so, my last question, then I'll let Sam ask whatever else. As far as needs or wants, should the board mention that like soon, or like when's our deadline to mention that?
It would be preferably sooner rather than later.
Okay,
This
so-
way I could,
So, can we, and it's been, I don't know how this works, but I foresee, setting aside a small dollar amount, this is probably very small in comparison to other things, for outside counsel, to be able to retain outside counsel. Is that something, once again, very small in comparison to anything we probably.
That could come out of
You mean-
the regular
That's
cycle.
budgeted
The
already for
board-
legal.
Yeah, if the board would like to have someone on outside counsel as retainer,
That budget line
Is
has.
that-
It's already built into it.
has
is it already, it already has flexibility?
There's
Okay,
always,
okay, I
again,
thought that's not a,
while we have a retainer, every year,
okay.
we also budget for unforeseen legal issues. So
Understood.
there is money in that code
Got it,
above and beyond what we would need for your recommendation.
thank you.
Are we talking about wants now?
sure. Before we go on with wants, the budget is tight. It's not,
You sound like my husband.
it's not,
Sorry,
it's,
don't ask him.
yeah, it's, there's not a lot of room for wants, but go ahead.
Okay, so we had discussed, several, I don't even know how many years ago, that we would like to add a PPS person, each year, a social worker, psychologist, so we had been doing that for the past several years, except we didn't add
At
one
what
last.
level? At what level?
Um,
Elementary, middle, high school?
no, just generally, we said we were gonna add social worker guidance, we were gonna add to that each year. And we had done that every year, except we didn't do that this year, so I would like to
I
put
think,
in,
Jill, to your question, I think we had talked about, we added an elementary position that's now servicing all three buildings, and we had talked about the aspirational goal, or the goal of increasing that level to 2 or 3 over a number of years. I think, at this point, we have that position in the working budget, but again, we want to get Victor's draft budget into January and see what that bottom line looks like in relation to the tax cap. So we're also looking at potentially, as we're reviewing staffing needs, we're looking at some significant increases in general staffing. So in that discussion between now and early January, we all want to see that position in. We'll have to do an analysis of that as we get to the bottom line of the staffing budget.
okay, I just wanted to reiterate that is on our want list. And like I said, if you didn't hear me, the weight room is something that you know, and I guess that would be a capital thing, not a.
With
That'll
the,
be-
with the Pilates reformer,
That'll be on the spreadsheet, but it will not be highlighted.
But if we're talking about like capital, that would be a separate capital project, probably not
Again, one of the conversations, Joe, that we had, with our architect, and frankly, it's a number that surprised me. John, and I guess it's been verified by, some other school districts that are currently going out to work. New construction is now running, for our estimate purpose, $1,000 a square foot, which is absolutely, I mean, insane, in terms of, as you look at, any new construction in any school district. And again, Victor, it was not that long ago where we were looking at, $500, $600 a square foot. And it just, the prices since COVID, again, and $1,000 a square foot is an absolutely ridiculous number.
Should have done a bond and built everything 6 years ago.
I don't know who made that recommendation, but.
Along those lines, not to just add on to Mrs. Citron's point, I think also is the most popular class here. I think choreo might be the most popular class. I know the initial plans we had for the weight room included some new dance studio, which I'm sure Mrs. Corbett and Mrs. Leonetti would fully appreciate, as would the hundreds of students who currently participate in that program. For the technology that Mrs. Vartanoff asked about, is it possible perhaps for the technology department to put together almost like a roadmap for technology purchases, the way Mr. Hahn and you put together a roadmap for capital expenditures? Just because, like,
You mean as far as like what
we're doing this year, what we're doing next year, like a 3 or 4 year roadmap to say, this is what we want, these are the, if there's, devices or other infrastructure, things like that.
Well,
I didn't remember seeing, I mean,
well, if it wasn't in the technology, when we get to technology, I think that's the third presentation. I'll ask Patrick to put that in.
Again, I think when Patrick has presented, he has presented, this year I'm planning on buying 600 Chromebooks and, 100 iPads. And I think typically he has laid out for us, and, that is this year's plan, and we'll make sure that he talks about next year, the year after.
well, no,
But
I mean, he
typically-
certainly said what he's doing for this year, but it's like also,
Yep.
what we're doing for the next 3 years, so it's not just, okay, this is what it is, next year we're gonna do it. With the technology plan, only because it's come up recently again, I know that there's 1,800 factors that go into it, and hopefully when we get rid of cell phones, it will become much easier. But some focus on our Wi-Fi and, systems here where, whether it's students or parents who are in the building, I still hear about it, but I don't see it as much as they do.
The wireless access points, I think, are included in our E-rate, so I think there's an upgrade in that area.
in your what, in your,
E-rate, it's federal funded.
oh,
I'm sorry, back to dance studio and
weight room.
the weight room. Are we,
Is there anything else, guys?
Oh, well, I mean, the Seaman Auditorium is always gonna be in there as a line item joke, but yeah, it's always good for a chuckle.
Yeah, 10 mil?
Wow.
I think the weight room's about 4.
4 plus.
Wait, that's for the double-story dance studio weight room, or is that just the one-story weight room?
That's the weight room.
If you build it, Sam will name it after you.
That's, if I build it, if I pay for it,
Does,
I'll take it under advisement, along with Jennifer's husband. When he and Leo and I go halvesies on.
Well, if we can do it 2-story, and we could do the Perlman weight room on the first story, and the Vartanoff on the second story.
so when it comes to the $1,000, I'm just curious with the per square foot, is that when you're dealing with demolishing something? I mean, demolition is usually very cheap.
That's just new
That's
construction.
new construction is $1,000 a square foot.
So when you're
So the
talking about an
Perlman-
auditorium, you have to demolish it to kind of rebuild it, or?
No, I mean, Seaman, it would be new construction. It would be I think we had looked at, building it next to the gym, but that would be new construction. The Perlman weight room would be new construction.
You can see Perlman spends very little time in the weight room, so he really doesn't get that excited about it. you may not, this is sort of a weird one, as I was saying before, I've been going through a lot of just statewide statistics. When I look at US News and World Report, and they talk about Jericho, they say that we have revenue of $40,000 per student, and we have a spend of $35,500 per student. Where's the other $4,500?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
Sam would.
No, I'll send you, it's from their website. Like I said, I was going through it, I was just sort of looking to see how various districts reported to sort of benchmark it, and every district has that. Every district has, several $1,000s, whether it's $2,000 to $5,000 more revenue per student than spend per student. And there's no way to explain what that
spend per
is.
student will likely not include the propositions that we do every year. So the propositions that we do every year, that is spending out of the capital reserves, that would not be included in some of the spending data that is out there, and that makes it a pretty significant difference.
Sam, also, if you look at different sources, and very frankly, I don't understand it, but if you look at US News Report and it'll say 40, and you look at other reports, I've seen a variation that's been from high 30s to mid 40s in their depiction of our expenditure per student. And I don't know whether they have, again, different variables of what they include and what they don't include. But again, I've over the years have always seen $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 variation in terms of what they tag us as spending per kid, what they include, what they don't include.
My experience has been the same when I look at it, even when a district says, not just ours, what other districts say they spend, and then what gets reported here. I'm just trying to figure out what that delta is.
But Sam, you've been on the board for 4 years, you've been in the district a long time, you know the delta is used to put into capital reserves and capital projects year after year after year.
No, 100%. I understand that, but it's like every district, like I can show you Jericho, Roslyn, Syosset, Great Neck, Garden City, East Williston, all of them have this $3,000 or $4,000 difference. Some of them spend a lot more on capital projects than we do, some of them spend a lot less, but it just seems like in the current numbers there, everybody's got a $3,000 to $4,500 delta there, which leads me to believe it's not just one-off projects, because everybody's not building at the same amount of time. If you, like I said, I was trying to figure it out. I'll call US News and World Report to figure it out. I don't know what it is.
But again, I'll go back to, what we do with our surplus every single year.
100%.
It's putting it into capital reserves, and we put forth propositions every year. A lot of districts, you mentioned earlier, bond everything, and they don't have a lot of capital reserves.
And that's why I don't think capital reserves is what compensates for that. That's what I'm saying, because every district, even those with like Syosset, who just put out hundreds of millions of bonds, they still have a delta there of $5,000.
Wait till you see but Sam, wait till you see what that delta is 3 years from now. That delta will be based upon $170 million.
You or I both won't be here, so it's okay.
But both of us will
Sam,
still
that
be
delta
watching.
that you just mentioned, about 4,000 per student, we have 3,000 kids, that's a surplus of $12 million. We do not have a surplus of $12 million.
No, Mr. Manuel, I never thought it was a surplus. I didn't know what they were saying this was. Is this what they're saying administration is? Is this what they're saying? It's like, I don't know what we could spend $12 million on. I did that math. and
That's
I-
assuming this data is even accurate. Are we providing this data, or are they getting this themselves?
We provide all of our financial data to the State Education Department, which that information is obviously foilable by any.
It's online.
Right.
And there are some times where they include the proposition to capital work, which to me doesn't really make sense, because that's not comparing apples to apples of what your general expenses are for the year. That's an add-on that we do because we have the money saved already. And again, it depends on how they use the data.
I think their data is right. I just don't know what their data is. Like, there's lots of ways of presenting numbers. And that's why I was just trying to, if Mr. Manuel ever looked at
Well,
it.
they do this across lots of different,
Right, absolutely.
measures. I mean, hospitals, schools,
Again,
colleges.
like you said, you did the math, we don't have a $12 million surplus.
No, and that's why I didn't think it was surplus. I thought they were breaking it apart, and I thought maybe in your spare time you looked at it one year and you said, oh, that's what it is, but that's fine. You said it before, between fixed costs for salaries, salaries, health insurance, retirement benefits, and all that, we think that this coming year is still gonna be around that 75%, 72 to 75%
Yeah.
of the
overall,
budget?
Probably 75.
And finally, BOCES aid reimbursement, what is our percentage each year? What was our percentage for this most recent year that you have numbers for? What was our BOCES aid reimbursement?
It changes every year, and the
Yep.
bottom line aid is probably about 52%. There's gross amounts which are higher, but then there are certain expenses that are pulled out of that. And we get, the net aid is about 52%.
So 52% of the
Roughly.
stuff we buy through BOCES, we get about 52% back from the state.
Yeah, net.
So just want to.
Overall, BOCES aid. So
Okay.
if we're buying something,
What do we get on our laptop, on our Chromebooks that we buy?
that's probably the higher amount, there's not much deducted from that.
So we get most of that back from the state, you're saying?
Probably 60.
Got it, okay. Thank you. Oh, and I know it was a surprise to me. We've got more property beautification projects that you get thrown in, like we had all that planting by the front. That was a surprise when you came back. We just add those in every year.
What do you mean? Which?
We planted a whole bunch of trees by the guest parking lot, by the administration building, outside where the buses
yes,
are.
yeah.
All that stuff, it was just like, it was beautiful, but it was just surprised.
We do things like that on an annual basis. That's not a capital project, that's something we just do through the budget.
Okay.
Wonderful. Anything else, Victor?
That's it.
All right, thank you for that
You got it.
presentation. All right, excellent. So that concludes the two scheduled presentations for this evening. Thank you to everybody for presenting. I know we have a few people here tonight, not to preempt the work session, but I know the community is deeply interested in what's going on with regionalization. We firmly intend to give a very detailed update next week at our board meeting, but in the interest of just following up from the previous board meeting before Thanksgiving, the state did meet on December 9th, the Board of Regents, December 9th and December 10th. As we anticipated, they verbally walked back some of the things they said they were gonna do. Unfortunately, the written rule doesn't reflect that. So in keeping to our word, the Board of Education of Jericho in no way supports this regionalization plan. We are in the process right now of beginning to look at other avenues with respect to legal representation to see how we want to proceed. But we did indicate that if this was not done to our satisfaction and walked back in a significant way, that we'd be pursuing legal remedies. And again, we are beginning to look at that right now. Hopefully we'll have more of an update next week, but we will pursue this aggressively.
Do you want to join with the other districts?
We're looking at that. I don't, so I'm not saying no, and again, that's something the board would ultimately have to agree upon. We want to do what's best for Jericho. And that may very well be the course of action that we take, but individually or perhaps with other districts that are not involved. Article 78 is what the coalition is pursuing. And again, I commend them for their efforts. I just want to make this the most vigorous, and my understanding at this point is we do have standing at this point to pursue legal action. Previously, we weren't sure, and we will be looking at different options. But I considerably more information next week to report, but this board is in the process now of doing due diligence to identify how we want to pursue the legal action.
And again, for clarification, this is everyone at this table and everybody within our on the same page. We are in 100% agreement of how we're going to move forward to protect the district. The Board of Regents took the word compelled out of the page, how they did not make it as black and white as we wanted to see it. So as long as we've not done that, there is unanimity within our school district that we need to pursue our options. Right now, the board is going to look at what our options are through what agencies, and hopefully we will have more information by, again, a week away. Difficult time of the year, but hopefully we'll have more information to share with you next Thursday.
Yeah, before that, would you consider, can you just send another letter to the state saying that we are not out first?
I think our last letter.
Another letter.
We did not inform the state that we are opting out of the regionalization plan.
Officially, yes, correct.
Okay, so we could not take that action tonight, on our board agenda, it's already on our board agenda. There is a resolution from the Board of Education saying, Superintendent, please inform the State Education Department, we will not participate. That is on our agenda for next Thursday with full agreement from our Board of Education.
What's the deadline for about the resolution?
Well, it's in January, we're well before the deadline, we're in line with pursuing legal action if we have to, if we wanna join the coalition. We have plenty more appropriate for Jericho, we're gonna, take that option. We're gonna look at the costs involved in doing all of this, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're responsible with the taxpayers' money. But I can assure you that we will not participate in regionalization, and to the truth of what we said at the last meeting, we are pursuing legal action, we will be speaking with law firms, we will be getting legal opinions, and we will do what is best for Jericho. But make no mistake, we will not comply with this.
January 15th is the deadline to opt out of regionalization, so we have plenty of time for that, as I think the superintendent or Dr. Presser just said. Today was a work session, so, technically, we could do whatever we wanted, but, bad form to take a vote, since we have a meeting next Thursday. As the superintendent said, agenda for next week's meeting comes out tomorrow afternoon, evening, so if you go online, you'll see that proposal.
Yep.
On that proposition on our agenda for next week. In terms of litigation, it's a little fuzzier, but we believe until at least January to figure out how to sue and in what manner.
So additionally, I asked the board, I said, I am not going to send the 54-page document that they've requested. I'm not gonna finish filling it out, and I am not going to send it to the state. And I said, with your permission, informally, it will be with their permission next Thursday. We have not submitted it, we will not submit it. The board officially will give me permission to not submit it next Thursday. So we're on the right road.
And we will have an update next Thursday night with respect to our legal position and what we think will be best to pursue. But again, we will share that fully with you, and I anticipate we'll have good information.
Yeah, thank you. And another comment is that, recommendation for next Thursday, would you like to share draft of the reply, the email, the response to all of us next Thursday to share your.
Response to who? To the state?
To the state, the draft, we would like to take a look at before you click the button.
Is the letter gonna be, you're talking about saying that we're opting out of regionalization, not the lawsuit, you're talking about opting out of regionalization?
Yes,
That's
correct.
on the agenda.
It's a copy of that, a draft of that is on the agenda, you'll
We
be able to
can-
read the language
So the
tomorrow.
agenda, the agenda, we're in the process now of putting the final touches on the agenda. Once the agenda is approved, the agenda will be posted, and then we will read that letter.
Yeah, please.
In
and
public.
maybe put on the PowerPoint.
You will see it, if you go online tomorrow
You can
night,
see it in print.
tomorrow night, you'll see it.
District's website.
You will send it, Parents Square, correct?
No, actually, if you go on the Jericho Schools website and you click on district and you click on Board of Education, you're able to click the agenda for the meeting, which is next Thursday, December 19th, and you will be able to see the agenda, and you will be able to see the verbiage of that letter. Again, we're gonna discuss this at length next Thursday night and in great detail. We will read that letter in that meeting because the board is gonna have to approve that letter being sent. But again, I don't like to speak for people, but this is going to opt out. We're not completing that survey, Mr. Richmond is not doing that, and we are going to pursue legal action. So I can tell you in no uncertain terms, that's the plan.
Yeah.
You'll see that letter before, it'll get posted, and so into a chat room or into an email, and, you'll all be able to see it well before next
Yeah,
Thursday's meeting.
thank you, we would like to take a look at it before you click the button. and send it out.
No, it's gonna be discussed, it's not going anywhere until next week after the board meeting. Again, we
I
have,
haven't seen it, it's a very simple letter saying, we're not doing this, thank you very much.
thanks and good luck. We're not participating, yes.
It's very complex. Can we expect we have a final decision on the legal action by next Thursday's meeting?
I don't want to promise you that we're gonna have a final decision because like I said, we're in the process now of seeking additional legal advice because, again, an Article 78 proceeding, and we talked about this on November 21st when we last met. That may be the best route, and if that's what the attorneys tell us is the strongest and most appropriate route, then we need to decide, do we want to be part of Article 78 with the coalition, or pursue something independently as Jericho Schools, which obviously, carries, significance with that.
So what it means, we may not have enough time to finish the research to make a decision, why, or?
If we need to, I actually, we had spoken as a board, if we need to call a special meeting to conduct our business and appoint a law firm and pursue legal action, we will. Before January. So we will not let those deadlines get in the way of us doing what we need to do. If we have to call a special meeting, just like the state said, this is an emergency for Jericho, we will call a special meeting, we will all get together, and we will pass whatever motion we need to pass to get the work done.
So am I understand that correctly, saying that taking the legal action is for sure, right? And then how to proceed with that under discussion?
At this point,
Is that
based upon the letter that we sent to the state, and the resolution that we passed at the last meeting, we said if what comes out of the December 9th, December 10th Board of Regents meeting was not satisfactory to the Jericho Board of Education, we were gonna pursue vigorous legal action. We are at that point.
Okay, we have decided to take the legal action at this.
Based on what we know at this point, yes,
Yes.
we've decided taking legal action is the only alternative available to us. As Dr. Foresto said, there's not just one course of legal action. There are several courses, and we just need to now take a little bit more time to determine which is the optimal course of legal action to take.
The strategies.
The strategy, exactly, the strategy,
The law firm.
The decision is there.
exactly, the intent. The intent is to do that, the intent is to do that wholeheartedly. The only issue is, what is the best strategy? And as Dr. Foresto said, there are a couple of options. One, there's legal action by ourselves. There's legal action with some school districts. There's legal action as part of, for the people who don't know, the Coalition of Independent School Districts, which is a de facto, it's sort of an ad hoc group really, who's formalized, and they have litigation that we could join if we wanted to. On the off chances or some other legal principle we should be pursuing Article 78. Those are all things that we just need to solidify in our heads and with legal counsel to figure that out. But yes, the intent and the expectation is the state has left us no other choice at this point but to pursue legal action.
And those phone calls are taking place tomorrow. We've had this conversation, we've spoken with our own in-house attorneys, and we're also speaking with other firms. So that process will begin tomorrow morning.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Our intention, our purpose, our goal is to taking the legal action since right now we don't see a proper
That's happening.
amendment.
Correct. This is happening.
Yes, 100%.
That is good.
Keep going, what else? What else you got?
Those phone calls will be made tomorrow morning.
Yeah, thank you very much for the effort. We highly, greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Does anybody else have any other questions on this? I don't want to, take too much time on this tonight because people didn't have the opportunity to be here that perhaps wanted to be here and here. But what I can say is that we will have, considerable more information, and we will, look forward to a discussion.
Curious that how many firms we have been contacting with so far?
So far, we've spoken with our own firm. We've done a little bit of informal research just to kind of position ourselves appropriately. But, tonight, the board made the decision to formally pursue
No, we didn't take any votes.
We didn't take a vote, but we want to look toward formally pursuing legal action. I don't want to misspeak. So we will be speaking to law firms so then we could, get information from them and ultimately make a decision as to, how we want to proceed with that. But we do want to go legal. Again, to retain a law firm, to actually pursue, to file a lawsuit would require a vote of the entire board.
Yeah, thank you. We like this kind of the open discussion and transparent discussion. We would like to participate this kind of the meeting in the future.
And we welcome the input, and to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, this topic of regionalization has brought the community together in ways that I can't say that I've seen in the recent past. And again, it's great that people came together that had a strong opinion on something. Personally, I'd like to see more community input on all topics that affect our kids in general.
The one presentation, right, I like it, those data analysis, great,
Yeah.
great, but different people have their different opinion, like I ask questions, I do have something like, to ask, I do have some concerns, I mean.
And that, this is the, and this is the forum to ask those questions, and, yeah, so I thank everybody for coming together. Next Thursday should be a great meeting, I hope to have some more information for you. That being said, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight and have a great evening.
Hold on, before you go, where is next week's meeting? Is next week's meeting back here?
Back here.
It's back, okay, so we're not in school.
We won't have space issues.
7:30.
It's 7, next week is 7:30, the actual, yeah, 7:30.
Same location.
Here.
Unless lots and lots of people show up, in which case we'll move to the other, we'll move to the
So
auditorium.
next meeting, we're gonna see like a letter to the,
We're gonna have you'll be able to see it on the website in the agenda.
and our legal